After Hours Experience Extra. I am TC Restani, and just like the song says, here's Johnny. But we're not talking about Johnny Carson. We're talking about Johnny Carson's DeLorean with my good friend and DeLorean expert, Bill Shea. What's going on, Bill?
Hey, TC. How they hanging?
They're hanging fine. How are you?
Couldn't be better. Summertime and living is easy.
Now, we're talking about Johnny Carson. Everybody knows I'm a late-night talk show host myself, but Johnny Carson is the king, the undisputed king of late-night talk. And how did you get your hands on Johnny Carson's DeLorean?
Well, it's a short story and a long story. Johnny Carson was absolutely one of the early aficionados associated with DeLorean motor cars. In fact, he was a good friend of John Z., and he became the very first investor in DeLorean motor cars.
Unbelievable. Now, John Z., of course, that's John Z. DeLorean, who what the DeLorean is named after, those people out there who have no idea who John Z is. Now, we're talking about the DeLorean. It's probably one of the most iconic cars in motion picture history, thanks to the movie Back to the Future. And, of course, you own several Back to the Future DeLoreans.
That's correct. I'm very fortunate. I truly need therapy. But currently we have a total of 4.
You have 4 DeLoreans?
Yes, sir.
Now, I know of 3 now. I know the Time Machine, the one they use in Part 3, the replica one that you drive around all these conventions. Sure. Now, Johnny Carson's. Where's the other one?
Well, the 4th one is the process car, and that literally was a car used by Universal Studios after the movie came out in a special effects exhibit that was at Universal Studios in California. They wanted to show people how they did special effects for movies. So they literally took, just like one they used in the movie, they took the cockpit from a DeLorean, they mounted it on shocks, and they had a gimbal rod attached to the front of the vehicle. The interior of the car looks identical to one of the time machines. It has all of the time circuitry, et cetera, et cetera. And what they did was they could put 2 people from the audience into the cockpit of the car and reproduce and simulate the car as it was flying through space. So they literally would use the gimbal rod, and there'd be 2 people on that rocking the car back and forth. They introduced wind and rain and so on and so forth. And that car, when the exhibit was over, went into storage and leave it to us. We found it, and we're in the process of restoring that vehicle not only to its original beauty, but also to the point where we're going to be able to put passengers in the vehicle and recreate and simulate that ride.
Unbelievable. Did I tell you you're my hero, Bill?
You're in my will, my friend.
Oh, unbelievable. Now we're talking about the Johnny Carson DeLorean. Now, this is something that's really fascinating. I mean, everybody knows the Back to the Future DeLorean, but Johnny Carson was the king of late night for 30 years on NBC, and confirm or deny, but this was the car that he actually drove to The Tonight Show in.
No doubt about it. In fact, having been the first investor in the company, and John DeLorean really wanted to kind of smooth up to the Hollywood crowd. So other investors included Sammy Davis Jr., Merv Griffin, but Johnny being the king, he was very, very inclined to get Johnny involved with media coverage and exposure. So when the first production DeLorean came to the U.S. in April of 1981, John DeLorean decided he would have a big public event and literally give the car to Johnny.
Unbelievable. Now, do you have any history on that first prototype car?
Yeah, the prototype car, which is still in existence, is one that had a lot of other modifications that were changed when the actual production car came out. So they give Johnny the first production car under the lights, so to speak, because all the media was there and so on and so forth. Johnny drives off into the night. The car promptly breaks down 2 blocks from the Wilshire Hotel in Los Angeles.
Now, that could be like maybe why the DeLorean and Back to the Future kind of broke down. Was that like a little inside jab?
Could be. Well, Johnny figured, well, okay, so what? It's a new car. It's going to have its little glitches, as many of the early DeLoreans did. So they fixed it, and Johnny proceeded to drive it back and forth from the studio for about 2 weeks. And then one day he pulled into the studio parking lot, and lo and behold, those gull-wing doors that we know and love wouldn't open. He was literally stuck in the car. They had to cut him out. So he called up John Z. DeLorean and said, you can have this car back and stick it where the sun doesn't shine. So not long after that, in October of 1981, the vehicle, in fact, October of 81 is the largest production month for the DeLoreans being produced right outside of Belfast, Northern Ireland. And they're coming into the country fast and furious at that point. John DeLorean made sure that another DeLorean, and that is the car that I own, was delivered to Johnny, and he drove that car for the next 4 years back and forth to the studio and put approximately 5,000 miles on it.
Wow, that's it, only 5,000 miles.
Yep, he didn't drive it that often. I'm sure he had something else, but there was a little color associated with it. In fact, in March of 1982, he and wifey number 3, I believe that was Joanna, got pulled over by the California Highway Patrol.
Ponch and John pulled him over, huh?
Yeah, and they sure did, and they noticed that he had an expired license tag, and that was the reason they pulled him over. And then when they got talking to John, they also noticed that there was a little bit else going on, so they popped him for DUI.
Really?
No kidding, yeah.
Well, as long as it wasn't the white stuff that John Z had.
And, of course, we know that's a fallacy. So.
Now, can you imagine, going back to the story where Johnny is locked inside the other DeLorean, can you imagine what the NBC executives must have been thinking if Johnny couldn't make to do the Tonight Show, how much revenue they would have lost that night?
They probably would have brought everything out onto in the parking lot and tried to do it on site there.
Because at that point in time, he was the biggest celebrity on television.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. Now, when you're driving, do you have the Tonight Show theme playing in the Johnny Carson DeLorean?
I don't, but what I do have is a license plate that's kind of neat. It's Johnny's X.
Well,
That's my license plate.
He had about 500 of those, right? Johnny's X's?
3 and counting.
3 and counting, huh?
Yeah.
Now, now, obviously, Johnny got rid of the car in 1985.
Well, it got rid of him because the bankruptcy court was in full swing. And so in October of 1985, I think Johnny was just coming off the tennis court because I have a picture of him. He looks a little perplexed because they literally repossessed the car from his Malibu home in California.
How embarrassing is that for Johnny Carson, the king of late-night TV, making millions and millions of dollars to get your DeLorean repoed?
He was pissed. In fact, he submitted a bill to the bankruptcy court because he had just put another set of tires on it. So they actually paid him $425 for some tires he had just installed because he was going to get his pound of flesh out of it. So
unbelievable. That's television history you own there, Bill.
You betcha.
Now, let's talking about Johnny Carson. He obviously got it repoed. And then how did you get your hands on it?
Well, the car has a very illustrious history. In fact, with a little bit of a sense of pride and a little bit of bragging here, I'd like to think that this DeLorean is the most highly documented DeLorean of all time. Not only did it belong to the late-night king of TV, Johnny Carson, but every time that it changed hands after that, and I believe there have been 5 other owners, it's been in a museum, every time, because of the notoriety associated with Johnny, the transition was well documented. So every time the car sold, I have the exact date it sold, who it sold to, where it went, how many miles it had on it, and how much it sold for. So I've got the timeline, so to speak, and I've captured all of that information, which I have on a show board. When I put the car out, I have the show board out there, and people enjoy that. And in June of 2005, the last owner, a fellow in Ohio, was a very big DeLorean fan, purchased it, and it had at that time 7,400 miles on it. And between 2005 and 2013, when he was tragically killed in a skydiving accident, he put approximately 100 miles on it. So when I had the chance to buy the car, it had 7,500 miles on it, which if you did your math, I'm sure you can take your shoes off, TC.
I got them off right now. I'm counting the toes.
Count. 223 miles per year average. How about that?
Unbelievable. I mean, I get 10,000 on my limousine, but that's a different story for a different time. But unbelievable. Now, where do you house this? I haven't been to the Back to the Future barn in so long. I haven't been invited up.
Yeah, it's been 2 years. I just looked. As a matter of fact, we just cleaned up from the last time you were here.
Gee, thanks, Bill. But where are you housing this one?
It's out here in central Massachusetts. As a matter of fact, things got so tight in the BTTF barn, and for your aficionados, that's the Back to the Future barn, that, well, you know how things go. We had to build another barn. So we now have a totally separate barn in which we have some of our other cars, because the Back to the Future barn is just about up to capacity. So you have, and the boys from the farm that you play with also have an open invitation to come out any other time.
And that's the funny farm right there, Bill?
You betcha.
Okay.
I just said farm, and I let you put the adjective in.
But, yeah, now, do you have, you want to borrow the rainbow curtain from our set and put it behind Johnny's DeLorean?
You know what I have behind Johnny's DeLorean? I actually have one of his sport coats. I have one of his ties that literally is documented to him. And I've got a bunch of great photos. So you keep the rainbow, and I'll keep what I've got out in my barn.
Unbelievable. Now, when I come out there to the barn, I actually that's like touching the shroud right there. That's Johnny Carson's DeLorean. That's his clothing and whatnot. That's even more impressive to T.C. Restani. I can't believe I'm going to say this than the Back to the Future DeLorean.
Yep, and his DNA is all over it because this car is 1,000% totally original. It's been well kept, but it doesn't suffer the issues that a car that has very low mileage on it has, because it was always used. It was in a museum for a couple of years, but other than that, the people that have had it have not just stored it. They've driven it enough that it doesn't. The tires aren't, flat on one side, and it hasn't suffered the consequences of like dried up parts and hoses and things like that. So you may touch the shroud.
Unbelievable. Now, those aren't the tires that Johnny bought, are they?
Now, they may very well be. We got two sets of tires with the vehicle, and they could be actually the tires that Johnny bought, because they're definitely 30-year-old tires.
This is fantastic. This is unbelievable. This is like, finding Howdy Doody somewhere and putting it on your mantle. This is to me, as a talk show host, anything associated with Johnny Carson, forget about the other jabronis out there who are trying to be talk show hosts. He is the king of late night and will be for eternity.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We got a bunch of receipts because John DeLorean was courting some of the big names. So one receipt we have, now mind you, this is like 1978. They went out to a fancy restaurant, and John DeLorean got a receipt because he had paid for it. It said M&M Carson, that's Mr. and Mrs. Carson, and M&M Merv Griffin for dinner. Dinner was $397. I'm sure that included a little libation. And it also had a receipt for $38, mind you, $38 for a calculator that they must have had one of their minions go out and buy because they must have been talking dough. So $38 for a calculator is something you could buy at Staples today for $1.95. But back then it was a sophisticated piece of equipment.
You think Johnny ever loaned it to Ed and he can go out and make a packy run?
They were pretty close. I'm sure that, I wonder about that. Probably Johnny knew better, but my sense is that Eddie's DNA is in the passenger seat.
Unbelievable. Now, do you bring this out onto shows as well?
We just got it in May of this year, and we've had it out to a couple of cruise nights. And it's, of course, very intriguing because as you know, TC, the car itself draws crowds. Let me tell you what happened. The first time I took this vehicle out, I went to get gas. Just a mundane event. I pull into the gas station, which automatically becomes a half-an-hour event because the crowd gathers around. Out of the corner of my eye, I catch a guy flying by the gas station who slams on his brakes, does a U-turn, and comes flying into the parking lot of the gas station. He rolls down his window and he says, "That's a DeLorean, right?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." He jumps out, he takes pictures, and so on and so forth. Here's my point. If he had passed that gas station and it was a 57 Chevy, if he had passed that gas station and it was a Model A Ford, if he had passed that gas station and it was an old Corvette, do you think he would have done a U-turn?
Absolutely not.
That's a factoid. I said to myself, what impact this car has. People just gravitate to it. But here's an interesting thing. On Friday night, we went to a little cruise night outside of Worcester, and my pal, Ryan Arsenault, who I sold a stock DeLorean to about a year and a half ago, and I went to the cruising night, and we set it up so we had a threesome going on. I brought the time machine. He brought the stock DeLorean. And then next to that, we had the bus. And so it was a great, great event with a lot of people having a lot of fun. Many people, in fact, I'll bet 95% of the people in the world, TC, have never seen a DeLorean. 99.9% have never seen a time machine. But here's the neat fact. Little kids, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, come up to the car. They look at the two DeLoreans, and they look at the stock DeLorean. They say, "What's that?"
All right, yeah, it looks totally naked without all that Back to the Future stuff on it.
Guess what? They think all DeLoreans came with Back to the Future stuff. They don't even recognize the car as the car because the only one they've ever seen is the time machine. So I thought that was the neatest thing. These kids actually think all the DeLoreans came with fixtures, we'll call them.
I think they should have.
You'll be surprised what a few extra pieces the difference makes, right?
Unbelievable. Bill, you are my hero. You're the guru of DeLoreans all around the world there. You got Johnny Carson's DeLorean. Whose DeLorean do you want next?
Well, if I wish to stay married, and I've been married for 48 years, 6 months, 4 days, 5 hours and 2 minutes.
Not to be exact.
Not to be exact. If I wish to continue domestic tranquility and not end up in the barn, I think I'm probably done for the time being. But then again, you never know.
You're not done.
There's
because
always room for one more. I know that Patrick was on one of your podcasts a while back, and he was telling you about the truck, right?
Of course.
Yep, so we've had some fun with that. We've had that out to a couple of events. And it's interesting because I'm a people person and I watch people, and they'll come up and, of course, they recognize the time machine. With the truck, it's kind of like, okay, there's something is happening in their minds, and then, of course, we have the sign in front of the truck, and then all of a sudden the light goes off, and they'll go, "Oh, yeah, this is just like the one from the movie." And we'll go, no, that is the 1985 Toyota SR5 4x4 from the movie, and so it makes it another event. But I'll never get tired of it as long as it brings smiles to people's faces.
Well, one of these days I'm going to go up to the Back to the Future barn, and you're going to have the time machine train sitting out in the backyard. I
literally tried. The family and I were vacationing and doing the DeLorean show in June of 2012 in Orlando, and we went to Universal Studios, and we wanted to see the train because it was there. Except they had moved it off-site, off public viewing, like 3 days before. So I'm kind of an assertive individual, and I tried my very best to go up the chain of command because I wanted the family to see it because they had not seen it. But they said some stupid insurance regulation precluded them from taking us into the back area in the barn where they had it stored. And so I left a standing offer. If you guys decide you're not going to put that back on display, then I want to buy it. So I have a big backyard.
You do indeed.
And probably room for another big barn. So
or a replica of Hill Valley.
Yeah, the Hill Valley Limited. So who knows? That I always leave the door open. There's always tomorrow.
Now, I understand. I was talking to Patrick, your son. He assured me that when we have a brand new set, you're going to bring down Johnny Carson's DeLorean because it would only be fitting to have Johnny Carson's DeLorean around my new set.
Da 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 da. How's that sound?
Unbelievable.
We'll do that for you. You've got it. We will drive it into town. Couple of things coming up, and I thought I'd let you folks know. On Thursday, we're going to be in Newburyport. They're having a big event there, and they close down the streets, and it's called Cruising the 50s. And the DeLorean time machine will be there, and it's kind of going to be a unique setup because there's a bank there called the Institute for Savings. It's on State Street. And right next to the bank, you'll never guess what they have, TC.
I already know this. They have a clock tower, don't they?
They do, and guess what they're going to do?
They're going to stop it at 10:04 p.m.
They said they wouldn't do that, but I'm still pushing for that. But they're going to put a cable from the clock tower down over an old street light and right onto the hook, which we're installing on the time machine, specially for that event. So hopefully, oh my God, what if lightning strikes?
Well, you get your wish. You get to go back in time.
I better set the time then. I've got to set it for a special date that I can go back. And then on Saturday, we're actually coming into Quincy with the time machine between 1 and 3 p.m. at the Marina, Bay Marina. A good friend of mine, Les Gossel, is running for Senate, and I offered to bring the vehicle in to do an event with him because I said, hey, what better medium than to have a time machine talking about changing things in the future and not repeating the errors of the past. So I told my pal I'd bring the car in. So we're going to be on the highways and the byways and in and around Boston. And so if your viewers see us, they'll know who we are.
One last thing, Bill. People want to rent your cars. Well, how do you get in touch with you?
Well, they can definitely go to our website, which is www.88mph-timemachine.com. And as you know, TC, we are strong advocates for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and all profits we made, every penny of profits we make, go right to the Research Foundation for a cure for Parkinson's. So if anybody's interested, we're more than happy to talk to them. And what's good is you not only get the car, but you get Patrick and I.
Unbelievable. And you guys are priceless.
Thanks so much, TC.